Okay, so we are 12:30. Great to see everybody on today's report out. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Jenny Lewis. I'm Director of HR and Organisational Development, and I've got the pleasure of chairing. So we've got a great agenda. As we've just heard from Sophie, we've got the Medicines Management Kaizen event, so can't wait to hear all about that. Following on then with a piece of work from Andy, where he's going to be reporting out around his work around the Take Heart suite. And we'll do what we usually do, which is hear from both. And then please capture your questions, because I always think it's really important, either questions or reflections or comments. Always think like it's really important that colleagues that are reporting out have the opportunity to be able to hear other colleagues' thoughts and reflections and learning from. So store those questions up as we go along, and we'll make sure we've got some time for it at the end. So I'll hand over to all of those in the room from Medicines Management.
Thanks, Jenny. Hi, everyone. Hello, my name's Sophie Williams. I'm an improvement specialist for the Trust and workshop lead for this small, tiny Kaizen event that we've had just a day and a half this week. Small but perfectly formed team. Next slide, please. So back in 2022,
Sophie, we've not got your slides up. Is that just me or is that everybody?
I've got them, Jenny. I can see them.
I've got them.
Yeah, so can I.
See them.
I have got them.
That's fine. That's just me then. I can just see everybody. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Do we need to help you be able to see them? Rowan, is there anything that...
Jenny, no, it won't be that. If you look in the top corner of your screen, you might see just a small PowerPoint icon. If you click on that icon, it'll show you the PowerPoint presentation in big and put everybody back in the small view.
Thank you for the teaching. Keep going and your chair will shut up. Sorry.
Back in 2022, the green medicine units, which are receptacles for putting medicines in and recycling them back across the organisation, they were identified as a risk because the process had got quite complex, a little bit messy. There was no ownership around it, and so sometimes people had forgotten what the purpose of those units were, and often things that shouldn't go in those units had been put in them. So, for example, cannulas, dentures were placed in them, glass vials were put in them, and even feces. So at the MMPS Green Group, the team there decided there was a huge opportunity there for improvement, but also if some improvement went on there could be some successful gains for impact on the environment and the Trust's green plan. So we set out originally to do an RPIW, a rapid process improvement workshop, a week-long event earlier this year, but unfortunately due to a robot breaking in pharmacy, we were limited to what we could do. So we reimagined the scope and brought that down a little bit and decided to do a small Kaizen event focused on the ward J42 in Lincoln Wing, with the hope that if we could do some magic improvement there, the scale up and spread could be done at a later date. Next slide, please.
Hi everybody, my name's Wayne. I'm the team leader for this Kaizen event. I work in MMPS as a improvement lead in my day job. So on the screen now, you'll see our current value stream, so what the process is to date. It's broken up into two value streams. The first one in the top left corner looks at the process of when a medicine return unit has been identified to empty up to the point the medicines have been sorted for disposal or return back to pharmacy. The most time-consuming point within that value stream map, and you'll be able to see it on your screens, is 22 minutes, and that's for the water support team to be able to go through those medicines, identify which ones are suitable for returning back, which ones need to be disposed of, and that takes 22 minutes, and that's obviously variable on the amount of medicines that are in that unit at that time. The second value stream on the lower right corner looks at how the water support member puts that back onto our JAC system within pharmacy. So that keeps an inventory of what medicines we've got in the department and in the trust. So it's vital that we add these medicines back onto the system so they can be reused. That process generally is a relatively quick process, and depending on who does it, is more speedy than others. Amy, who I observed doing this practice, is very fast at this process, and took 41 seconds per medicine to get back onto the system. If you times that by the amount of medicines in the units that can be recycled, that adds up to a quantifiable amount of time. Collectively, those two value stream maps take about 33 minutes to work through individually, and that's per unit. So that's just for one area, 33 minutes for one area. Next slide, please. So reviewing the current process and speaking with those involved in placing medicines into the return unit or recycling medicines from the return unit, we had identified 3 measures that we were going to get baseline data for and then follow up after the Kaizen event. So the first one is a quality metrics looking at defects, so the amount of inappropriate medicines that have been placed in the units that can't be recycled and should have been disposed of in a different waste stream. So out of the 5 days I observed the practice for, 50 medicines were put into the unit, and only 12 of those could be recycled, which meant 38 had to be cycled through and then disposed of by our water support team in a different method. So that's for defects. So quite a high amount of defects within that observation. The second is about staff knowledge. So how we gained that data. We provided Emily, one of the process owners, a questionnaire, and she went out to her staff and asked her nursing team a set of questions of compliance with the bins, what can and can't go into these medicine return units. Out of the respondees, 84% of the people who responded got at least one question wrong within that questionnaire. That ranged from 1 to 6 questions wrong out of a 15-question questionnaire. And then the last point or metrics that we want to capture is from a sustainability angle. The amount of CO2 emissions that are caused by incinerating medicines that aren't appropriately disposed of correctly, but could be deemed appropriate in a different process. Next slide, please. This slide looks at the current financial implications of returning and recycling medicines and the CO2 emissions emitted from the waste streams. So J42 was our focus ward. As I said, we monitored for 5 days the contents of the medicine return units. You can see in the graphs that the percent of medicines that were suitable and not suitable is a big difference. But using the 12 medicines that were suitable for return and looking at the cost of those the value of those medicines, that equated to £471 being returned back into pharmacy, medicine-wise, and then being able to be reused. That's a savings to the CSU, so AMS for this example, and that's in a 1-week period. Over 52 weeks, that would extend up to £24,000, and then obviously we've got 100 of these units within the trust. You can times the figures by 100, and potential savings is massive. So that's just for 42. We also looked at 5 different clinical areas just to get an overview of actually the cost of 42. Is that replicated elsewhere? So we looked at 2 wards in AMS, 2 wards in cardiorespiratory, 1 ward in haematology, and actually the contents of their bins was significantly more, which would suggest that actually the potential savings are even bigger than what we initially saw. And then the little star on the right hand corner is not forgetting about the CO2 emissions that are caused from obviously disposing of inappropriate medicines. So through looking at the units, taking the medicines out of the streams that can't be recycled, that equated to a massive amount of CO2 emissions being released. Next slide, please. So this comes up to our Kaizen event. So the team sat down within the morning and went through an idea generation of what can we do to improve the process. and the process owners found 18 ideas generated, and that ranged from, we managed to group them together into 4 different groups. So it looks at job role and education and training from a nursing team point of view. It looks at waste stream avenues, and it also looks at digital improvement, if possible, looking at expiry date of medicines and such. We've focused on two of the themes, and I'll pass over to the process owners to explain them further. Next slide, please.
Hello, so my name is Emily Baxter. I'm one of the sisters on J42 supporting the event.
Hi, my name's Amy Nettleton. I'm a pharmacy support worker in Lincoln Way.
So myself and Amy, as part of the PDSA cycle, we focused on education. So it was evident from the Gemba walks that we did on the wards, in pharmacy and in dispensary, that there was kind of a lack of education around the green receptacle units. And we got quite a sense of overwhelming of signage and posters, which varied. There didn't seem to be kind of a standard across the different areas. So myself and Amy decided to focus on that, and from our sponsor challenge, Alison and Rick decided they wanted to make this everybody's business, so we felt that this was kind of the foundation that we needed to focus on.
We felt by the current poster, visual commands was negative, and we wanted to simplify it and educate on appropriate use of the recycling units. We decided to include a QR code on to get more information about medicines and to access the shop, and also on Padlet.
So following implementation, we're hoping to work closely with medical illustrations to ultimately get some signage that's permanent on the units. And something that we found that was different units had made their own versions, and these were actually on the units themselves, so weren't accessible to staff. So we are looking to study just 42, just because we've got the data from the value streams that we can measure against following the implementation. So the initial thing that we'll implement is going to be a poster, but hoping to advance on that. And this is just to test the process. We're hoping to see a reduction in the quality defects that are actually put in the units, and hopefully we'll see then a reduction in the carbon footprint and hopefully more sustainable work in the organisation. Obviously we've got the data from the target progress report, and this would be a measure against following implementation that we could kind of work towards. And the post questionnaire, so the questionnaire that we gave to the nursing staff, we could then reuse and do kind of a post review to measure the impact of our changes.
In the Gamba walk, we had an opportunity to speak to staff about the proposed work stream. Next slide, please. Further education was needed about the recycling units, and that they would benefit from the QR code of live streams, and these could be updated for more information.
Hello, I'm James, and I lead the award support teams across our sites. So we kind of are identified as a team that actually we've got about 13 or 14 people that pretty much process the vast majority of the 101 medicines returned units, which we have across our sites, and so over time that has kind of grown to something that has become quite unsustainable for the people the people involved, and we kind of felt together that as a team, this perhaps feels like it's something that could sit outside of a clinical pharmacy and kind of become a job role in its own particular right. So we've kind of focused on how can we provide evidence that this would be something worth pursuing in. So kind of our plan with the help of J42 is to kind of dedicate a set amount of time every single week to processing these returns and then on the back of that, working alongside Amy and Emily, once they've kind of launched their campaign of education, and is to then head back and kind of redo Wayne's initial data collection, and then we can hopefully identify any improvements. And can we go to the next slide, please?
Hello, my name's Tony, and I'm a QI partner with the Trust, and I've been a team member for this Kaizen event. Behind the idea of creating a designated role lies the desire to pivot from a current way of working which focuses primarily on doing. We want to create a culture of knowing exactly what needs to be done and to establish a commitment to the purpose of reducing waste, promoting responsible resource management within the Trust, and thereby contribute to sustainability within and beyond. Next slide, please.
So this is our action log. So you've heard from the process owners about the problems we've seen on the Gemba and the conversations we've had with the staff. We've attributed actions to those problems. Again, the process owners have talked through those. So within the action log, we've set who's responsible for those improvements and when they're going to be implemented by. If you go on to the next slide. So we're going to implement a temporary poster to see if it works in J42 and contact medical illustration for any sort of alternative stickers that could be provided that are more secure. We're going to study the designated role within pharmacy support workers. So Amy's going to trial that on 42. We're going to focus whether it has an improvement, and if it does, discuss next steps, whether it's going to be a focused role moving forward. We're going to produce some standard work, which will be attainable from that QR code, so it'll be on the internet and on the Padlet page. And then we're going to remeasure in 7 days, 30 days, and then subsequently 60 days, whilst providing communication to all the teams involved with updates. Next slide.
Thank you. It's safe to say this team have worked tirelessly over the last 48 hours to try and come up with ideas, test things, go onto the Gemba, speak to the staff. I'm immensely proud of them. And I just want to say thank you to you all. Also, thank you to our Tony for being outside eyes and guiding us. Our sponsors who are on the call, I think, Alison and Rick, for helping us understand certain things and point us in the right direction, giving us a great sponsor challenge. And our executive sponsor, Craig Richardson, as well, for supporting this work going forward. Everybody on J42 and 43 and across the wards that we visited, thank you for letting us explore. And also to the rest of the pharmacy team, obviously hard at work in the home team, doing and keeping everything going, and medicines going across the organisation. So thank you very much.
Wow, oh my days, that was absolutely, that makes you tingle, doesn't it? So I'm going to hand over to Andy in order that we can hear about all of your work, Andy, in the Take Heart suite, but let's also create some time just to be able to talk about both presentations, because I'm sure there's lots that people want to say, and there's some fantastic stuff in the chat MMPS and J42 and 43. So take a look at that as well. So over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Jenny. Some big boots to fill there, so I'll try to keep us to time. So next slide, please. So my improvement project was based around trying to improve efficiencies through our Take Heart suite, which is our day case suite. So just to give you a bit of background, so we have one of the highest performing cath labs in the country, and this was recently evidenced at the National Cardiology Benchmarking Collaborative, which a number of trusts attend on an annual basis, who are cardiac specialist cardiac centres. We are an exceptionally high performing team, as I say, but we recognise that there's always room for improvement. We currently have 6 operational cath labs, but from January we will be going down to 4 labs because 2 of the labs will be under refurbishment. So we want to maximise the capacity that we have, both now and from January. So my focus was to review the admissions pathway and process steps through our day case suite, Take Heart, in which approximately 80 to 100 patients move through the suite each week. And the patient's procedures are a combination of pacing and PCI procedures. So the split is around 50-50. The aim was to improve and maintain productivity and efficiency, and obviously work collaboratively with the clinical teams to improve on excellence. The overarching objective was to use the Leeds improvement method, tools and methodology to contribute to improved first case start times. Next step, please. So what did I do? So we had 2 improvement sessions or Kaizen events with the KPO team back in May. We had excellent clinical engagement with in excess of 25 participants, and we developed 2 action plans, one focused on cath lab start times and one focused on the lab ward interaction. So in terms of my role and where my focus lied in the wider improvement work was around the streamlining the patient admission pathway. In order to do that, engage with the appropriate clinical staff to understand the pathway challenges within Take Heart Suite, and of course went to walk the Gemba and observe and listen as the clinical teams worked those patients through that pathway. So I undertook a timed observation, outlining the process steps, and then took that away to kind of map that out into what you see before you in terms of the process map in fine LIM fashion. Maintain that 2-way dialogue with the clinical teams just to make sure that my interpretation of the pathway and process steps that I'd mapped out were in effect accurate and reflective. So that was really important to have that 2-way continued understanding. Next slide, please. So what did I identify? The outcome was identification of a number of different wastes along that patient pathway, and also not only identification of waste, but where we could intervene and put in measures to address those wastes. So there were wastes identified around the cannula trolley not being fully equipped, equipment items not being available to the clinical staff in Take Heart Suite, process steps as well in terms of at what stage were patients having their height and weight. In this case, the patients were taken to the admissions room, worked up, taken back to height and weight, and then back into the admissions room. So it's almost kind of just reviewing those steps. And there was some time delay between the patient gowning and the clinician kind of returning to that patient. And in this, during this observation, it was around 10 minutes. And then there was some duplication around the information that's captured on the paperwork, the clerking paperwork, and what we then record in our clinical systems. So the measures that we implemented were relatively straightforward if you consider these things. Was implementation of a cannula trolley checklist and continuously reviewing the stock on that cannula trolley. We're developing a case of need for a funding request to get some equipment, the blood glucose machine in particular, in the Take Heart suite, so the staff don't have to leave the suite to go to the ward to search for the glucose machine and then back to Take Heart suite, which is a lot of time wasted there. The process steps as well, reviewing and reordering the process steps. So can height and weight be done at the beginning of the process rather than working a patient up, taking them out and going back in? So that was reviewed and that's been changed as well. And we're also trialing patients wearing their own clothes into the cath labs. So 50% of that would equate to 50% of our day case patients. So if you can take into consideration during my observation, it was 10 minutes for a patient to gown and then the clinician to come back. If you multiply that over the course of the week, it equates to about 8 hours that could be saved. I need to stress that I did one observation and this may not have been the norm. So I think obviously Leeds improvement methods suggest that you observe 7 times. So I'm well aware of that. Even if we said, okay, the average time is 5 minutes, that's still 4 hours across the course of the week. So it's still a significant amount of time. And then there's ongoing discussions around removing unnecessary information recording. A lot of these patients go through the day case suite, we're filling in checklists, but they're never going to make their way onto a ward and be an inpatient. So why are we filling in some of these checklists that are never going to be needed or looked at? So I think that's a very important thing to take forward. Next slide, please. So what went well, as you can see from these 2 images there, the clinical engagement was essential, and without the team's involvement, we wouldn't be able to work through half the things that we have managed to work through. It was an opportunity for me as a manager to walk in their shoes and then see it firsthand. The process steps that they go through on a daily basis and the intricacies around that. I think that's very important because you can often be disconnected from that. Obviously identifying wastes and having those wastes validated by the team. So we had my process map blown up in A1, put on the ward, and gave staff the opportunity to either contribute more to the waste that I'd identified or just reinforce those wastes were in fact factual. And then obviously it went well implementing interventions to improve efficiencies. And the work that I'm talking about in terms of just mapping out the patient pathway and reviewing that patient pathway is a small piece of a wider piece of cath lab improvement work. And there has been tangible improvements on our first case start time. So we agreed as a team that our metric for first case start times would be 9 o'clock. Through the multiple improvement work, elements of the improvement work that have been implemented, patients are now going into labs 11 minutes before that 9 o'clock start. So that's a significant saving, and making sure that our labs are operating on time and effectively. The 11 minutes that you see in front of you is specific to Take Heart suite and those 2 types of patients that go through the suite alone. If we look at the wider data, then there's further improvement still. It's averaging about 17 minutes for all cath lab cases. And that's thanks to the wider improvement work. Next slide, please. So next steps for me is to revisit the place of work post implementation of some of these changes and undertake another timed observation to see if what we are seeing is factually reflected in the steps that I review. We're going to develop a patient questionnaire to measure the impact of changes, particularly around the patients wearing their own clothes, and see if they are reaping the reward of that. There's things around dignity, because we can't have patients sat in gowns and Take Heart suite, and it's just gauging their view. Is it better for them? Is it less? Does it make their procedure less? Them less worried about their procedure and things like that. CareCube scheduling tool, just quickly touch on that. So this is a tool that we've invested in that will help provide tangible outputs of our cath lab data and usage. So it's continued utilisation engagement in that. Continuous engagement from my perspective and management's perspective with the clinical teams, which is vitally important, and development of a production board, which stems from the use of CareCube and now the Easy module, which we can pull real tangible data from. And obviously celebrating success, because it's the small wins that the marginal gains that we want to make teams aware of. And finally, for me, do these efficiencies translate into financial savings, which is what we all have a big focus on at this moment in time. So that is it from me. So thank you. Hope that was short and sweet enough.
Oh, well, absolutely. Another phenomenal report out, Andy. Brilliant. So let me open it up straight away, because if colleagues can just give us another 5 minutes. Comments, questions, thoughts, there's loads in the chat. But let's give these two teams, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Look, both fantastic pieces of work. Thanks so much, everybody. I mean, the drug waste one, that is an absolute marvellous one. And I just hope we get into think around scale up and spread on that, because I'll put in the chat, if you said there was 100 sort of units and it's £24,000, that's a lot. So please do encourage to scale up and spread on that. And Andy, if we can pick up, how we might represent that in our thinking around next year, that'd be excellent. And then Andrew, the stuff on the cath lab's marvellous, absolutely marvellous. I was really pleased that you mentioned towards the end the scheduling system, because, and you questioned about how do we cash this out, because basically what you're doing there is lots of things to reduce the amount of time that your patient needs to go through the system, isn't it? So I would hope at some juncture we can change whatever the standard times are in the scheduling system so we get more patients through, and that'd be excellent. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Brilliant. The other Andy?
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Simon said some of the things I wanted to say, actually. I mean, I'm always blown away. Two fantastic presentations from Andy and from the Medicines Pharmacy and J42 team, with how much you can do with structured approach and time and effort. And it's a real testament to how well the Leeds improvement methodology works, and really just a massive shout out to others, actually, to use the techniques and use colleagues in KPO and improvement specialists, because you can see from today the benefits are just fabulous. So well done to the two teams. Really proud of the pharmacy team and nursing team, close to my heart, as you can imagine, but great work. So well done, everybody.
Wow. And James?
Yeah, fabulous work, guys, and really nice to see the way that both projects are looking at using insights and engagement with patients. We've just recently done a kind of self-assessment against the NHS impact framework, and that's an area that I think we can do more on as an organisation, and indeed is a core part of our improvement strategy. So really nice to hear how that's been applied in both these projects.
Fabulous, thanks, James. And if I can add, the two things that really, in addition, stood out for me, both have got some real measurable impact on emissions. So fabulous. And Andy, I absolutely loved your point about getting on the Gemba in order to be able to see it for yourself. I thought that was really impactful. So what a fab report out. Congratulations to all of the teams. Tony, it's lovely to see you in the MMPS. I can't believe you've done all that work in 1.5 days. So I love that you just ploughed through that issue of what you'd normally do in 3 is now in 1.5. It just shows what can be done. And doesn't that, for those of you that are on call and working this weekend, I hope the hospital is okay. And for those of you that aren't, I hope you're doing some nice things. So fabulous. You've made my day. Well done. Brilliant.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.